I'm Corbett Wall with DVAuction, here with your feeder flash for Monday, June the 24th, brought to you in part by Macrocin by Bimeda. Macrocin is proven efficacy at an affordable upfront price. No BS, end of story. For more information, go to macrocin.com. Also, Joplin Regional Stockyards, big yearling special here today on Monday. And you guys may not believe it. I know a lot of you don't believe it when I tell you they're starting at 4 in the morning. They're starting at midnight. They're going to start at midnight on Monday morning. And you know, it's going to get hot on Monday later in the day. They like to get those cattle put through there when the temperatures are cooler. And the people that want to buy those cattle, they'll be there to buy them. If you don't believe it, get on to DVAuction.com when you get up to P. And they'll be selling cattle in there, and they'll be selling strings of them, guys. They got 10,000 head of cattle they're going to sell on Monday, and it's a big yearling special. We're going to have 150 plus loads of yearlings. If you're wanting some loads of yearlings, guys, that's where you go to get them, DVAuction.com, if you can't be at Joplin Regional Stockyards in Carthage, Missouri. Southern Plains is gaining. They gained quite a bit of ground. We talked at length last week about how the Southern Plains was at a $10 discount to the Northern Plains fat cattle trade. Well, this past week they closed that gap a little bit, at least $2. So we saw that the Northern Plains sold cattle from a lot of steady to as much as $2 higher, but the Southern Plains was $3 to $4 higher, straight across. The weighted average is going to be significantly higher. Now, we don't have any idea how many cattle have traded because most of the cattle traded late on Friday, so after the 2 o'clock deadline to get that turned in through mandatory price reporting. But I'm thinking that the Southern Plains probably didn't trade that many cattle, but the cattle that they did trade were higher. The Southern Plains traded, or the Northern Plains traded the bulk of the cattle. They were higher too. But that weighted average is going to be a lot higher, and it's going to cost them on the formula, so they're based off that weighted average, guys. But you know, they got to get the price up there, and the cattle feeders are in the driver's seat still, and your packers have pulled back on your slaughter. But the heck of it is, most of the pullback is on cows and bulls. Of course, we know how high the cows and bulls are, but there's just not that many cows and bulls out there. So our cow and bull slaughter is down significantly. We're still slaughtering about the same amount of steers and heifers as we did a year ago, but our total cattle slaughter is down some. And I think a lot of people think that pullback is having something to do with our fed cattle price, and it's really not, because most of the pullback is on the cows and bulls. Not that they don't want to slaughter them, they just don't have the availability of them. And that's why the prices are so good. And of course they have competitive bidding and negotiated trade on cows and bulls, so when they really need them, they have to give big prices for them. We've seen bulls bringing up over $2 a pound. We've seen cows bringing up over $160. And so, you know, it's just a big market for your cows and bulls. I think it's going to continue to get higher because the availability on them is not going to pick up for quite a while. So if you've got some cows and bulls, way up cows and bulls, slaughter kind that you're wanting to take, you are in the driver's seat. And of course, we got the big 4th of July holiday coming up, and they're always short of those in the summertime. Then they have to shut down on the kill, and they're really needing that ground beef. So you're absolutely in the driver's seat if you have way up cows and bulls to sell. Now, the cattle on feed report come out on Friday, and sure enough, we weren't paying a lot of attention to it, and it was bearish. Mostly all on the placement side, but it was bearish. The inventory on cattle on feed, June the 1st, come in at 99.9% of a year ago. The average of the analyst guess was 99.2, so that's bearish. It's all to do with your placements. Where all these placements come from, I don't know. But your placements in May come in at 104.3% of a year ago. The average of the analyst guess was 99.4. So that is very bearish. And even though it's not that many cattle, we're going to find out here on Monday when the board opens, how much that's going to hurt. But I still say, we're so tight on all classes of cattle. We still have excellent demand for feeder cattle. People just want ownership of the cattle and the calves too. So, it may be a little bump in the road, a little blip, may cause the board to go down here early in the week, but I think it will recover by midweek at least. Now your marketings come in, and that's another head scratcher. Of course, I told you why, is because we're still slaughtering about as many steers and heifers as we did before. We got lighter slaughter because there's less cows and bulls, but our marketings come in, and that has to do with the slaughter. Marketings come in at 100.2, and your average analyst guess was 100.1, so that just reiterates what I told you about the steer and heifer slaughter and how much down we are on the cows and bulls. But going back to the placements, talking about them, how could they be 4.3% more than a year ago? And I remember a year ago, whenever our placements come in, and we were surprised at how heavy our placements were then, because we thought at that point that we were tight on feeder cattle and calves. We're still tight, and even tighter now, much tighter, because our cow herd is smaller. And a year ago we were saying, well, these placements are big because it's so dry and there's no place to turn those cattle out, and there's just no other place for these cattle to be than in the feedlot. Well, that is not the case this year. It is an average year at least, and most places have ample moisture. There's tons of hay everywhere. I drove up to Iowa, Audubon, Iowa, to give a talk on Saturday, and drove through a lot of country. The corn has never looked better for this time of the year. The beans might be a little bit short. They were a little bit late getting some of those in, but the corn looks fantastic, and there's absolutely hay everywhere. Everywhere. I mean, the hay in the bar ditches is more than some dry years. It's just unbelievable. So there's plenty of feed around. There's plenty of places for cattle to be other than the feedlot, yet we've got these huge supplies of placements coming in. Now, we've seen some data come out recently that said your big feed yards, 50,000 head feed yards or bigger, have doubled in the last 30 years. And there's more cattle in your bigger feed yards, and those are the ones that mostly report there. And and of course that's been coming, and so that's not a big thing to talk about. But we did see big cattle on wheat, and they gained their heads off. Absolutely gained their heads off. So we're seeing 1,000, 1,100 pound cattle come off wheat. Now maybe those cattle would have been placed earlier this year, and then the graze out was fantastic, so they were able to keep those cattle out longer. So maybe that's why we saw more placements come out in May, and that's got to be it, if there's any truth to that report at all. But like I've said before, just because USDA puts it out doesn't mean it's true. It just means it's official. Let's talk about your board. For last week, June live cattle there. Monday they were up 22 cents. Tuesday down 37. Wednesday was Juneteenth holiday, so your board was closed. Thursday was up 40 cents. Friday up 52. With June live cattle ending the week at 187.60. That was up 78 cents for the week. August ended the week at 183.15, which was down just 2 cents. So not a lot really going on in your live cattle pits there. August feeder cattle, they were all down every day that they traded, which was just 4 days, but they were all down, yet your cash feeders were higher for the week and every day of the week. But August feeder cattle for Monday were down 65 cents. Tuesday was down $1.37. Wednesday it was closed. Thursday down 12 cents, and Friday down $1.45 before the cattle on feed report come out. And I assume that the feeder cattle for sure will be lower on Monday when the board opens. But August feeder cattle ended the week at 258.37. That was down 360 for the week. September ended the week at 259.90. That was down 280. Your fat cattle trade through Thursday at 2 o'clock whenever they have to have those purchase information turned in to USDA. But through Thursday at 2 o'clock, they had only sold 2,500 head in your 5-area feeding region. That is absolutely nothing. But like I said, most all of your trade happened on Friday, and a lot of it happened on Friday late. But up through Thursday of last week, we had sold fat steers and heifers from 188 to 197 in your 5-area feeding region. That was from steady to $4 higher on the spread. Your weighted average price was 195.11, which was a bunch higher, but we had absolutely no trade in your Southern Plains at that point, and I told you earlier it was higher. So that weighted average is going to be a lot higher than it was at the end of the previous week. Dress sales last week were 305 to 310. That was $2 to $4 higher in a light test on those two. Weighted average on dress steers through Thursday was 308.19. That's going to be a ton higher too. But Friday is when they sold the cattle, and it was late Friday, so I'm going to tell you the early sales Friday before 2 o'clock. Iowa sold 4,000 head, only 5,500 for the week up through early Friday afternoon. 193 to 198.50 on Friday. That's steady to a couple bucks higher. Dress sales 306 to 310. That's sure $2 higher. Nebraska 2,200 head on Friday. They'd only sold 300 more than that previous to that, so only 2,500 for the week. Live sales in Nebraska on Friday at 198. Dress sales from 310 to 312. Kansas only sold 600 head on Friday. They only are up through 2 o'clock. And then for the week in Kansas, only 800 head. So nothing, but they did sell cattle after 2 o'clock, and I'm going to tell you about that in a second. But the only cattle that sold on Friday in Kansas was northern Kansas, and they went with the northern trade. We've been seeing that here for the last few months. We're seeing some northern trade happening in Kansas, and it's falling into the Southern Plains trade. But 197 in Kansas, that's not the Southern Plains market, and that's not Southwest Kansas and not the Texas Panhandle, but it's northern Kansas. But dress sales in Kansas on Friday at 310. In Texas, they only sold 100 head on early Friday, only 500 head for the week. No live sales on Friday, and some 310 dressed in Texas, which we never see any dress trade in Texas, and it's trading pretty much steady with the Northern Plains. The Southern Plains is gaining. They're catching up here, guys. The guys are tired of doing that. They don't want to sell them $10 back and report that sale live FOB anymore because it's just too far back. So the trade in Texas and Kansas late on Friday was 189 to 190, and that's $3 to $4 higher. That's a big gain for them. It's still a big discount to the Northern Plains, but that's a pretty good trade, 189 to 190, and we'll see how much they traded to that on our next visit whenever we get those reports that come out on Monday. But box beef cutout values were higher for the week. Your weighted average on all of last week's sales on choice, 321.39. That was 310 higher for the week on your weighted average there. Your dress sales weighted average for last week, 303.96. That was up 323. And that choice select spread, $17.43. It's widening here as we're in grilling season. And that's based on 644 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings. Your slaughter estimated for the week was 620,000, 5,000 bigger than the previous week, was 29,000 less than the same week a year ago, but it was mostly cows and bulls. It was less, guys. Talk about what else is going on. If you like watching this report, but you're not getting it on a regular basis, you get tired of looking for it, just text the word flash to 209 Corbett, and your automatic will get those through text. You'll get the link for them. Every day you'll get the link for them texted to you, and all you have to do is hit it. You can watch that report. And I tell you what, this report continues to gain popularity. We will cross 18,000 subscribers this week. Now that's not listeners, that's not followers, that's subscribers. 18,000, and like I say, it's not kittens and it's not girls gone wild. So it's people that want to know what the cattle market is doing, and it's cattle people. And if you want to promote your cattle market, or you want to advertise to cattle people, this is the place to do it, guys. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DVAuction ended the week at 256 smooth, based on an 800-pound cash auction steer. Sounds pretty impressive. That was $1.63 higher than the end of the previous week, but your CME cash feeder cattle index, the latest, came in even higher than that at 257.47, but it's still below what your feeder cattle futures are for August. And of course, we're a long ways from August. I think your board could be down quite a bit on feeder cattle to start the week, but I don't think it really means anything because there's so much time to play between now and mid-August when it needs to start meeting up with what cash is doing. But your cash feeders and your sale barns last week, feeders were steady to $4 higher. Calves were steady to $6 higher, and I know it's hot, and I know a lot of the calves are soft. People just want ownership of cattle. They're realizing how tight we are on numbers of feeders and calves, and they just want to buy them, guys. And then, of course, we had some special preconditioned calf sales there that added to that increase in the market there. But let's look at some of your markets. How about your NationalBeefWire stick-out sale of the day for late last week and over the weekend? It was Turlock Livestock Auction Yards in Turlock, California. You think, well, they're way off the beaten path. They got to be a long ways back. You know, nobody's turning any cattle out there. They turn them out in the wintertime. No, the market's really good in Turlock, California, guys. Look at this automated market report through Cattle Market Central and look at your best tested weights. 224 head of 5-weight steers in Turlock, average 557, with a weighted average price on all of them at $303.76. 585 head of 6-weight steers in Turlock, average 675 at $268.47. There was 409 head of 7-weight steers in Turlock, and they averaged 745 at $253.29. Your heifers way out west, there was 165 head of them in the 5-weight category. They averaged 553 at $282.31. 402 head of 6-weights at $639, average price $265.83. And 195 head of 7-weight heifers, Turlock Livestock Auction Yards in California, they averaged $721 with a weighted average price of $245.82. Give you some individual quotes from all around, and I mean, it's just higher and higher and higher, and they're so impressive, guys. Look at Santa Teresa Livestock Auction. My buddy Tato Medina there doing such a good job with that sale. They're selling Mexican cattle across the border. They're on this side of the border. They are ready to go to your place. No more dipping, no more hoops to jump through. You can get on DVAuction and bid on those cattle. You can get an order in there and buy those cattle. You buy those cattle, they're yours. Back your truck up to the chute, load them, and take them home, guys. But they sold 62 Pee-wee steers at Santa Teresa, New Mexico. They weighed 334 and bring $3.56 a pound. Pretty impressive for Mexican steers. How about Bloomington Livestock Exchange in Bloomington, Wisconsin? That's way up there in the upper Midwest, guys. 59 steers weighed 890 at $254.50. How about Fort Pierre Livestock Auction up in the northern plains of South Dakota? 62 steers weigh 903 and bring $262.50. That is $5 higher than your CME index based on an 800-pound steer, and those steers weighed over 9. But the most impressive quote that I saw anywhere late last week or over the weekend in your Macrocin, no BS, top quote for the day, come out of Crawford Livestock Market, Crawford, Nebraska. Alicia and Rich Robertson, they're my good friends. I've gotten to know them really well and really like them. They are soon going to be adding DVAuction broadcasting to their sale barn. We're excited to have them. Check out this quote on some big steers there in Crawford, Nebraska. 57 of them weigh 1013 and bring $254. And that's your feeder flash for Monday.